All right, ladies and gents, it's story time. So we're going to talk about one of my clients today that actually reached out to me in November of last year. Now, really cool, this gal reached out to me last week. She wanted to reconnect because when she reached out to me for her consultation, we actually had her eating a high amount of calories. And I eventually knew after she was eating this high amount of calories that she was going to want to go into a calorie deficit to improve her body composition and lose body fat. The really cool thing was she went off and did that on her own, just with the information that I had provided her. 8 months later, she reached her fat loss goal and we needed to talk. Now, I asked her to provide me some questions that she had for me before we talked, and these are the questions. So in today's video, I want to answer these questions for you, and I hope that this information helps you transition out of your next fat loss phase. Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is William Grazione. I'm the owner of The Educated Dieter and your health and fat loss strategist. And just like I said in that introduction, we are going to be walking through some of the questions that one of my clients had on how can she transition out of fat loss, because she took it upon herself without my guidance to go into the calorie restriction. She did that, had a lot of success. I think she dropped about 15 pounds of body fat, and she's only about 3-4 pounds away from what her end goal is. But she wanted to talk to me beforehand so that we could begin to strategize exactly what she needed to do or consider going through this journey, because of the fact that she was kind of scared, in all honesty, to eat more calories. Just like many of you, you hear about reverse dieting, you hear about the diet breaks, but a lot of you are scared to eat more food. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to answer these questions for her and provide her a sense of safety and understanding in the simple fact that, yes, you've lost the weight, but our goal here is not to gain it all back. So question number one for you, if you happen to be at the end of a fat loss phase and you're considering implementing a diet break, what should you do right now? Ideally, I would recommend experimenting, trying this process out, trying out how to use a diet break, because I know that many of you are scared of eating more food. You think that by eating more food, psychologically, you're going to gain all this weight back. However, what I'm here to tell you is a simple fact that if you are still losing body weight each week and your fat loss progress has been linear, if you add in more calories, you are not going to gain back the weight that you lost, because all you are doing during a diet break is you are refilling the energy gap that was created by you dropping your calories under your maintenance. So, as a very smart and intelligent method, I would recommend just adding in maybe 300 calories up to maybe 500 calories and running those numbers for about 3 to 5 days and then assess how you feel. One of the best tips that I can give is to create a Word document and put some questions on there. Ask yourself, how's my energy? How's my sleep? How's my sex drive? How's my bowels? How's my energy in the gym? How's my macro tracking adherence? How's my mood? Answer those questions before you start the break, because you're at the end of a fat loss phase, so you may notice that you're a little bit, ornery and so on and so forth. On the other side of that, you go through the diet break. Implement these calories. Maybe even implement a deload from training. Or if you're not training super hard, maybe just consider tapering your 5-day program down to 3 days, maybe 4 days. Give yourself some more opportunity to rest. And then after you're done with that 3 to 5 day break, ask yourself the same questions. And I can guarantee you that you will feel better after. And the really cool thing is that big thing that you were scared of, your worst fear of gaining back the 20 pounds that you lost by having this diet break, it's not going to happen. And forever at that moment, you will change the way you think about having these higher calorie days, having these diet breaks. Because the only way to conquer that fear is to face it head on and implement this strategy as soon as possible. And if you do, you're going to learn a lot about your body, you're going to learn a lot about your metabolism, and you're going to learn a lot about yourself. And you're also going to be able to clip on a new tool that you have because you've experimented with something and it actually worked. And question number two is, when do you recommend implementing a carb cycle with somebody that has already lost maybe 15 pounds of body fat? So this is a really good question, because I think carb cycling is relative to the person that we're trying to diet down. In a different video, I talked about how if an individual was very heavy, we could go super aggressive. Do you think we have to carb cycle them? Probably not. There's going to be no metabolic adaptations we have to worry about. In all honesty, by losing a significant amount of body fat, we're actually improving their hormones, we're improving their metabolism, we're improving insulin sensitivity and all those types of things. But in somebody that's already lean, is carb cycling valuable? I think this is where carb cycling shines, is with women that are chronic dieters, women that are high stress, men that are already lean or already athletic, and really any human being that's probably like less than 25% body fat. I think carb cycling in and of itself can be one of the best tools that you can specifically implement because of the fact that it always gives you something to look forward to. It, in theory, is a very short break from your calorie restriction. Now, I know that each and every one of you out there that have tried a diet before in the past, you know what it's like to get to day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, you're 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks in, and you haven't had a high calorie day at all. That hunger is real. So what I would encourage you to think about is what can you implement as a means to say, oh, well, every week I have this one higher carb day and it actually helps keep me on my diet. I think the biggest reason to implement high carb days is to keep you on your diet. It's to keep you consistent and it's to keep you moving forward towards your goals. They can also momentarily spike and elevate your metabolism by upregulating a hormone called leptin, which then sends signals throughout your entire physiology. And granted, in a one-day refeed, leptin's typically only elevated for 6 to 8 hours, but I do believe that leptin can be increased for prolonged periods of time if you happen to begin to start stacking 2-day diet, 2-day refeeds, 3-day refeeds, 4-day refeeds, 5-day diet breaks, so on and so forth. Now, leaner individuals should use carb cycling to a greater degree than obese individuals, okay? So if you're really heavy right now, just focus on losing that first 10 to 20 pounds. If you're somebody that's lean, go ahead and consider implementing a carb cycle as soon as possible so that you can keep the fat loss going. I hope this helps answer that specific question. And again, in this specific client's case, I had her implement a 1 high, 3 low day carb cycle effective immediately. So many of you may ask, well, what's the best carb cycles that you have found to be useful? I think for people that are kind of at the tail end of a fat loss phase, I do think having maybe 1 high carb day a week or 1 high carb day every 4 or 5 days is very beneficial, especially if you're a woman that's dealing with a lot of high stress issues. And question number 3 she asked was, Coach Will, does protein intake ever change? So with protein intake, there's a couple different circumstances that I would encourage you to consider. Now, many of you may have just been eating the same amount of protein forever. Maybe your protein, if you're a woman, has been 120 grams the whole time you've been with your coach. If you're a guy, maybe it's been 200. But there are 2 specific circumstances where I would recommend your protein intake should either go up or potentially go down. Those 2 circumstances are, if you are reverse dieting and you're trying to build your metabolism up by seeing how many calories your metabolism can metabolize, and you notice that your carbohydrate intake begins to get pretty high. 250 grams, 300 grams if you're a woman, 400 grams, 500 grams if you're a guy, then there's a likelihood that a lot of those proteins from the carbohydrates are going to negatively impact the amount of real high quality amino acid proteins from protein sources, like your chicken, your steak, your eggs, and all of that. So if you notice that the trace proteins from the carbs start to take over at least 25% of your protein intake, then I would recommend increasing protein. So as an example, if I had a woman that was on like 60 grams of fat, 250 carbs, and 120 grams of protein, but I want to bump carbohydrates up to maybe 270, 300 grams, then of course, in that specific circumstance, because there's so many trace proteins coming from carbs, I need to increase protein. So I'm probably going to go ahead and bump that up to like 140 or something like that. So at least she can get in an extra protein shake or eat maybe an extra 4 ounces of animal-based proteins to essentially help to make sure that she is in a position where she's getting all the amino acids that she needs to help her build the amount of lean body mass that she wants. Now, the other side of that is starting a fat loss phase. Now, if you're on maybe 120 grams of protein as a woman, and let's just say, for instance, you're getting ready to start a calorie restriction, I don't personally think it's a bad idea to actually jump that protein intake up by 20 to 25 grams. Even for men, again, I don't think it's a bad idea. If you're at 180 grams or 200 grams, not a bad idea to take that 180 and bump it up to 200, or take the 200, bump it up to 220, because it's just more circulating amino acids in your body that are ultimately going to help you with with recovery. So do I ever adjust protein? Answer to that is yes. And I have one more tip for you. The other time in which I will adjust protein is if I think somebody needs to basically go through what I call a restoration process. What this process is an instance where we have a client that comes in and they report that they do not feel good. They've got gut health problems, they've got adrenal problems, they're tired all the time, they have no energy, they're overweight, they're insulin resistant, high inflammation, hormone imbalances, all that kind of deal. What I actually do is I will drop protein, and I'll take protein down under 100 grams in those specific cases, and I will increase carbohydrates, increase fats, make sure that the majority of the foods that are coming into their diet are anti-inflammatory, and we will typically have a scheduled amount of cardio, scheduled amount of steps, scheduled amount of resistance training. We'll also take a break from caffeine. We implement this, and then over the course of 2, 3, sometimes even 4 weeks in some more advanced cases that may have an MSQ score, which is short for metabolic stress questionnaire. If the MSQ is like 40, 50 plus, we probably need to keep them in this phase for at least a month. If the MSQ score is a 20 or a 30 or a 35 or something like that, probably 2 weeks is enough. But this is the only time where I will intentionally reduce protein because I want to basically make sure that we are taking them through phase 1 and phase 2 detoxification processes properly to essentially make sure that we can cleanse the liver and the GI tract, get them going to the bathroom every single day, improve the absorption in the GI tract, and then we will re-implement protein and we'll get that protein back up to an evidence-based range to help them support their muscle building goals. Now the last question here, question number 4 was, once I hit my goal, how do I navigate back out? I love that my maintenance calories are around 22 to 2400 before the fat loss phase. Is it realistic to think that I can reverse my way back there again? So this is a really, really good question. I think it's realistic to understand that your metabolism was once very healthy, right? You have started on this weight loss journey, you lost the body fat that you wanted, your metabolism was thriving when you weighed 15 pounds more, and it was around 2400 calories, which is amazing. But we also have to think that if we lose 15 pounds of physical body tissue, right? Does that slow the metabolic rate down at all, or does that reduce calorie burning because I'm essentially weighing less? Kind of like throwing a 15-pound backpack off. Do I burn more energy with the 15-pound backpack on, or do I burn more energy with the 15-pound backpack off, right? I would say that her maintenance is probably still going to be around 2,000, 2,100, 2,200, taking into consideration that she's just carrying 15 pounds less of body weight. So the way that I would transition out of your fat loss phase is basically, like I said, with the diet break. And I think this is also ties into really well why that 300 to 500 calorie increase is such a good idea, because it teaches you to not fear the food. Now, a lot of people will actually not decide to diet break or not go into a reverse diet and just stay on low calories because they're scared of what's going to happen. But again, I'm here today to tell you that if you are at the tail end of a fat loss phase, increase those calories by 300 to 500 and just sit there for a week, sometimes maybe even 2 weeks, and bypass the super slow reverse diet. I don't think the super slow reverse diet for the person that's trying to get out of their calorie restriction is a good idea, because oftentimes it makes you hungrier than you were. I mean, it's probably going to be the hungriest you've ever been because your metabolism is slowly being upregulated, but your body, your metabolic rate can actually get higher, and basically you're at a point where you can't keep up with the increase in metabolic rate by how many calories you're eating. So then your hunger can actually increase dramatically, which can cause you to fail on your reverse diet, which you hear people say that all the time. So I recommend more of a recovery approach, diet break approach. Increase those calories, sit there for a week. Once you've achieved that and your weight doesn't change, increase by another 100 calories. Do that for a week. Once you've achieved that, can you increase by another 100 calories? And over the course of time, you'll eventually get yourself really close to what you think your maintenance is. And then you have to ask yourself, now, do I look good? Check. Do I feel good? Check. Can I eat enough calories where I'm not starving all the damn time? Check. And am I hormonally healthy? And then, considering the amount of calories you're eating, considering the amount of exercise you're doing, considering the steps per day and the cardio, can I live my life here? and be happy and have all 4 of those boxes checked. I think that's the proper way to transition out of a fat loss phase without regaining back all the weight you lost through a standard, reverse dieting process, where again, most coaches out there are just reverse dieting you into insulin resistance. So with that being said, if you happen to have any questions, go ahead and leave them in the comment section down below. We are always here to answer your questions. And I want to let you know that our podcast will be relaunching in the month of September. So if you haven't tuned into Hey Coach Radio yet, you can find it on Libsyn, iTunes, and Spotify. Thank you all so much for tuning in. God bless, and we'll see you in the next one.